Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Meetings of the Zoo 1446. I'm your host, Johnny Hellcat, and with me are minions Sanguine
Good evening, all.
and Jen.
Hello.
How you guys doing today?
Doing fairly well. Just trying to work on my dinner a little bit more. My rice is currently in the cooling stage after being in the rice cooker so that it gets just the perfect texture. And then I also have my swordfish steaks that I'm going to have for dinner, currently marinating in my fridge, just waiting to be tossed into the screaming hot cast iron that I have on the burner.
Nice.
Yep.
I woke up in the giggliest of moods because I never engage in Twitter wars, but this chick put her foot in her mouth, and so I retweeted it calling her a hoe because she did a sexy pose in front of her dad's funeral, even though the guy's a fucking vet.
Okay. I was about to say, normally, if you put your foot in your mouth, that isn't making you a hoe. It's something else that goes in if you're a hoe.
Well, listen, there's a lot of things that you have to have done for me to actually retweet that and call you for what you are. But all the details that went into that, I was just like, yeah, she's a hoe. And then I proceeded to argue with this guy who kept trying to tell me why what she did was okay, and we've been exploiting the dead for years. And I'm like, maybe in your hellhole of a household, maybe you exploit your dead, but nowhere else in the world have I ever seen somebody do that. And chances are good if she'd done this anywhere else on the planet, she would be shamed for life. Try
Also,
pulling that shit in Japan.
I'm wondering who's been exploiting the dead for ages? Are there really? Is it that there's just this run of women who, at my father's funeral, check out my OnlyFans to see a picture of my butthole?
Don't get me wrong, there are certainly people who exploit the dead. Absolutely, they are. But I've never seen them be caught and have it be considered acceptable when they're
And
caught.
normally, the way that they exploit the dead is they try to puppeteer the dead after
Mhm.
the fact. Like all the people that are, oh, you think that George Carlin would be on your side of the
Hell yes, he would. If you're telling him what jokes he can
conversation?
and can't say, he would be on my side.
Yeah, and I'm going, the man got arrested for the 7 dirty words. What? Do you think that he was pro censorship? How the fuck? But people will try to puppeteer the dead by going, oh no, he would be on our side. He would agree with us that you shouldn't be allowed to say things because they hurt other people's feelings, despite the fact that his entire career was made off of fuck your feelings. It's funny.
I can only imagine. I can see Greg Giraldo standing side by side with Chappelle.
hmm
Uh,
hmm
just for the fact, I mean, he has a joke where he's talking about. He's like, I wouldn't care if one of my sons was gay. I have 2 other normal ones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the other thing too: is most of the people who are crying about this are the very same people who can dish out shit to you about your
Yep.
lifestyle and everything to do about you, all the gaslighting that they like to do, where they put your opinions in your mouth, even though you've probably never spoken to them. Yeah, they have a really shit list of really shitty behavior. Not just the main person talking, but I've seen some people in those videos where I remember them from other crowds. And yeah, a lot of them are shitty people. I even saw a girl that reminded me of one of the ones that was at a George Peterson rally, the one that broke a phone, stole the phone.
Yep.
These are the same recycled people. And to be quite frank, they're in a cult, and it's narcissism. I hate talking like I'm a psychiatrist when I'm not, but I admit I've been following a couple of people really explaining the differences between sociopath, psychos, and narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
And
Are you talking about that guy that kicked the phone out of that chick's hand?
yeah.
I can't remember the nickname that I think Matt Christensen came up with for it. I can't
Oh, yeah,
remember
I'm not
offhand.
sure. I know that all of them had nicknames. The only 2 that I really remember well are, of course, Big Red
Yeah.
and Trigglypuff.
hmm Yeah, there's so many of them. But like I said, it's the same group of people, and I've come to the conclusion that I'm no longer going to respond to these people like they're part of the group that they're claiming, because I feel it does a disservice to the group that they're coming from. Because the LGBT, honestly, they are trying to speak up. They actually are. There are people in that group who are actively trying to speak out because, to be honest, I think they're terrified.
Yeah, it's like there's a massive difference between a lesbian and someone who is politically lesbian.
And there is, yep.
The politically lesbians have been giving lesbians a bad name for the longest fucking time.
Yeah.
Just like the politically gay are giving gays a bad name, but the politically gay tend to be not quite as vicious as the politically lesbian, because the politically lesbians tend to be the ones that they will just absolutely go after a bi woman, because how dare you betray us? You're not just fucking women. How dare you be willing to fuck a man? And it's just like, what the fuck?
And they're the same ones. They're the same ones who'll justify sleeping with a trans woman, as though that's really that different. No offense to trans women, but if a lesbian is willing to sleep with you, she's probably bi. Sorry, but if I was a lesbian, by definition, that means that your penis actually scares the shit out of me. Like, I want nothing to do with the penis. And I know you're going to be like, well, you use a dildo. Dildos are different.
It's not that the penis scares the shit out of them. It's that the penis holds no allure.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, it looks like a retarded mushroom. Can you get that out of my face?
But yeah, it's a common theme from them. And here's the other thing too. There is no gay man that I've ever spoken to in my life. And I started early. I'm almost in my 40s. And so my first gay man that I met was probably when I was 15. He was also 15. You know what he didn't want? He didn't want pussy.
Yep.
Didn't want pussy. He was a nice guy. He did date girls because he didn't want the school to know that he was gay. But you could tell. You could always tell. I always knew. Nice kid. And I did stick up for him because I was just like, yeah, kids can be assholes. But my school was actually really good. I'd say the only time I ever had something happen in my school where I got outraged because of someone being an asshole. Someone called my friend a chink. And I proceeded to tell her that my brother was on the rugby team and that there was like 20 other guys on that team with him who would be happy to pound the shit out of an asshole for her. Because I don't.
Like I said, it was just a horrendous misunderstanding. She was wearing armor at the time, and there was a defect. So when they said, "Look at that chink in the armor," they did not mean your friend. They were talking about the defect in the breastplate.
To be honest, I kind of laughed at them too, because as a white girl, I will admit that my Asian friend was a hottie too. I was always kind of like, don't you guys really like the Asian girls? Because she was a hottie. Like
There's certain people that do. There's certain people that don't. Like,
I'm sure there's a certain
Jack Cochran. Or what is it? Not Jack Cochran. Jack, Monkey's friend. Jack, you.
Yeah, that's Jack Cochran.
Okay, good. He changes his name,
Motherfucking Cochran. Or, depending on who you're talking to, Jack Cockring. Because that's been a standard mispronunciation there, but yeah, it depends on the guy. Some guys really like Asians. Some guys really don't. Just like there are guys that really like black women. And guys that are going, nah, don't like them. Don't like the features. And that's the thing. It is hardly ever to do with, I don't like their skin tone. There's associated features that if you like really fine features, you aren't going to be attracted to most black women because as a group, black people have more blunted features, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
So they have wider noses, typically. They have a bunch of other aspects. If you prefer blunted features, then yeah, you aren't going to be real big fan of Northern European, which tend to be fairly fine featured, or Asian, which tend to be fairly fine featured.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll really like black people, or there's a bunch of other groups. Subcontinent is really good for that. So it depends on what sort of specs you like, what features you like, which group you're more interested in.
You know, another thing I always kind of wondered about when I was a kid too, with the way that we interact with each other, and I think it's maybe a little bit different for a lot of us, just because North America is a melting pot, so your chances of this happening are a little bit slimmer. But when I was a kid growing up here, there really wasn't that big of a minority population. That's not to say they weren't there, but it wasn't very big. And it was one of those things that I kind of always wondered, like, if I were to like move down to the US, would I really be able to read the expressions off of like multiple faces like black people? Not because I couldn't, but because I hadn't grown up with those facial features. Because when you're a kid, that's kind of part of communication, is learning how to read faces. And it was one of those things I really got that thinking because I hadn't really interacted with a lot of people of color. And it was one of those things where I was always paranoid that I would piss somebody off without knowing. Just because reading expressions is kind of part of what stops you from doing that a little bit. Like if you're really good at observing physical behavior of other people, you can kind of tell when somebody's getting stressed out before you keep going.
You're talking to the wrong person when it comes to that. I'm a spurg.
Yeah. Yeah, I've constantly kind of had that thought. Like, I mean, I've had way more interactions with people of color now, so I clearly don't have that problem. But when I was a kid, I did actually wondered if people had that problem. And now we all kind of interact with each other behind a screen, so not always, but.
But yeah,
when I was a kid, there was a Laotian family that lived in town, and I lived in a town that had like 500 people in it. And so, you know, I was the girl was my classmate. I had a huge crush on her, and I mean,
naturally,
not because she was Asian, but it made sense when I grew up that once. I guess once, you know, trying to get into the dating scene was a thing. Which for me didn't happen until way later. I think I was 17 when, like, I was trying to pursue the fairer sex.
Yep.
And failing spectacularly, but because, you know, I'm a man of words.
And also, if you don't fail spectacularly, then you have just some goddamn divine features or some shit.
But it always pissed my friends off because a majority of the girls that I was friends with, you know, were pretty attractive. And I had like zero interest in all but like two.
Nice.
And so they're like, "Oh yeah, you can introduce me to them." I'm like, "Well, I'll give it a shot." And I ask, they're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay."
See,
They're
I
not
wouldn't
interested,
be.
so.
I wouldn't be upset with the guy who's friends with all the attractive girls, because I would be going, well, are you interested in any of them? No. Okay, so introduce each one.
Down the
Let's
list.
go down the list, see which one is interested.
Well, I'll tell you that your friends made one mistake for at least some of those girls. There's no shade in trying to do the middleman, but a lot of girls will tell you no because you weren't the guy to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Just because it shows bravery, which I feel for guys. Like, as a woman, I've seen women actually grow some balls and be the one to actually go and ask somebody out. And I acknowledge that from the person watching that, yeah, that takes a shit ton of bravery. But to a lot of girls, it's kind of your way of saying, hey, I actually really like you. Because girls are always wondering that. That's kind of the constant thought in their head is, does this guy actually really like me, or is this just for sex?
That's what's really funny with my kids. With my kids, when I was with their mom, it was normally like when after work, me and a couple of my coworkers would just go to the bar and then just detox from our shit day and just, have a few beers, bullshit, end of the day stuff. And then all of a sudden she's just like, hey, you don't mind if I join you guys? And we just look at each other like, all right, like, we don't care, do what you want to do. And she joined in the conversation like the rest of them. Mm-hmm. And at the end after they were done, she's just like, oh, so what are you gonna do now? And I'm like, probably just gonna go home and watch a movie or play some video games or whatever. And she goes, well, do you just want to come over and watch a movie with me? And I'm like, all right, whatever. And just completely oblivious to the fact that she's asking me over.
Oh yeah, I am the worst person when it comes to picking up any sort of hints or anything like that because Spurg.
Yeah.
And
a lot of things that women get wrong, and this is a majority of women, not all. We don't do hints.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I noticed that too.
What do you think? What are you thinking?
Do
nothing. Oh, he's thinking about something.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you guys, but there's women like that too. I don't take hints either. I've never taken hints.
But yeah, this is also just reminding me of, I had one friend in college that was damn near the ultimate wingman for people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was this almost albino-looking motherfucker. But if he had a drink or two in him, he would immediately do the, How I Met Your Mother thing of, so have you met so-and-so? Even though he doesn't know the girl either. He just introduces and then fucks off immediately and it works somehow. That would be that friend from college. A drink or two in him. And he set up like 3 or 4 different people by just, alright, so you find that girl attractive? Okay, follow me. And just walk over. Have you met so-and-so? And then he'd fuck off immediately. And a conversation would happen. It was ridiculous that he had that ability.
So this is a little bit off topic. I was kind of trash talking a certain royal because it's fun and he's a ginger. Mostly because I have awareness of the fact that he did military training in my province. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I know about it is because they suspected that he got caught drinking and driving. I don't know that's a fact. I always suspect that the media is lying about shit. But I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, do you think any of Prince Harry's friends actually had the man talk while he was in my province? And I really had to think about that. Because my province is well known for having really heavy, hard liquor when you go out drinking. And I was like, you know how many women would have kidnapped him and taken him home? Mm-hmm. I hope his friends had the man talk with him. Because it's not just the ladies who have to be weary of people taking you home. Women will kidnap you. And it might not come out well for you on the other end. Especially when you wake up and you realize what you're sleeping next to.
I'm not going to say I know by experience, but...
Sorry. I know I brought in him with that, but yeah, I was picturing Prince Harry. Oh, I know the women in my province. They totally. Yeah, I hope you had friends with you, buddy.
I remember my first time going out drinking. I just turned 21, and it was a work day, so I didn't have a lot of time. My sister was taking me out for a bar crawl, and it was her and one of her childhood friends, and me. And we're sitting at the bar. Her friend takes off early, and this gal comes up, and I'm cracking jokes like normal. I'm uncomfortable in the in weird areas, like when I'm not used to anything. So this lady, she's not a 10. I'd say she's a drunken 6. And I'm like,
her drunken 6 or your drunken 6?
My drunken 6.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, let's see where it goes. Thinking that, like, if it happens, it happens. If not, if not. And all of a sudden, I crack a joke, and it's just really awful. Like, no one, it should have been one of those jokes that, like, just bombs, and everyone kind of just, even people who haven't even heard the joke, just stare at you like, what the fuck did you just say? And
like just took a dump in the chair that you're sitting in.
Just right on top of the bar. And she has one of those, like, throws back your head laughs, and I just see nothing but, like, salt and pepper in her mouth where her teeth are supposed to be. And that just immediately, I'm like, we need to go. Like, I gotta work tomorrow. I gotta go. Like that.
You know what? I might be cheeky. I've been thinking about doing this for a while. I'll have to do this. At some point this next month, I might start doing video streams when I game. So, I might put a picture up if I can. Steam and StreamYards updates for me sometimes, and I remember all the time that I'm not really much of an internet person. Alright, let's add one.
And if you guys hear the hiss and sizzle, that's swordfish going into screaming hot cast iron.
Don't expect beauty, and I'm not putting a full picture on there. You can kiss my ass.
But yeah, this also just reminded me of the articles that have been coming out more and more frequently in the past couple years that just make it obvious that, yeah, there's a lot of people that don't realize what it's like being the opposite sex. The articles of women saying, I was abused. I didn't get any compliments through high school. And I'm just going, oh.
I was kind of grateful. Because if you got attention in high school, that meant you were a target.
Yeah, there have been a bunch of articles about, like, how a woman didn't get any attention, hasn't gone on any dates because no one's asked her out, and other ones where they're going, do you know how damaging it is to hear no when you ask someone out? And I'm just going, oh, you sweet summer child.
you sad little man.
Yeah.
I was a total nerd in high school, so I was, like I said, I was kind of grateful when people didn't notice me. But on the other hand, I always kind of forget that my brother was on the rugby team, and when I say that people left me alone, they really did leave me alone. I guess he beat up people when I didn't know about it, and I was like, you really shouldn't have, but I appreciate you for it.
See, I was a very interesting mix. Hold on one moment. Whew! I'm accidentally, effectively created OC spray in the tossing that swordfish into the skillet because it has peppers, and the peppers reacted with the hot skillet and just started off-gassing, something that made my mucosal membranes very unhappy.
Are you burning a little bit?
Oh yeah, and it just caused me to sneeze like 3 times, which is why I said, hold on a moment.
Yeah.
But hey, your sinuses are clean.
But yeah, I was a very interesting mix in high school because I went from varsity football to varsity chess in the same year, and I was still varsity football. It was just football season ended, and I went, hey, there's a chess team at this school. Let me try out for the chess team. Oh, okay. I'm now 3rd board for the chess team.
Yeah, we didn't have anything like that here.
Yeah, my favorite pepper story is still the one with the jalapeno guy who was the chef who was like, I'm the god of cutting up jalapenos. I don't need to wear gloves. And then he went to the bathroom and didn't wash his hands first.
Yep.
There's always one guy who does that. And there's ladies too.
I actually, I was working at a pizza joint and I was cutting peppers, and they were teaching me how to do the prep work and how to do the dough and everything. So like, okay, you just need to slice up these peppers, cut them in half, and then just make the string of pepper. Mm-hmm. And I chopped into a pepper, and the pepper somehow was a little too juicy.
Oh, and the juice sprayed into your eye?
And it shot me right in the tear duct.
Yep.
And I started screaming and hit the ground. And people are like, oh my god, how much blood is there? And I'm like, no blood, just pepper.
Yep. Yeah, as people should know by now, because I've mentioned it many times on the screen, I was a corrections officer for a while. And part of Corrections Academy was the chemical shack. And then there was also several times of incidental exposure just due to, oh, someone just got sprayed and have to go hands-on? Fuck, I'm going face first into goddamn chemical. But I thankfully do not have the worst reaction to it. Mm. It just makes me a little bit snotty, and I get kind of burny, but it's not incapacitating. Mm. And then in OCCS, one of them, the OC, oligocapsaicin, causes the burning sensation. Then the CS in OCCS causes a very mild amount of inflammation, which is what causes you to get that kind of, okay, my throat feels kind of tight, when you get gassed. And I get a little bit of the burn from the OC, but it takes a moment for the CS to kick in on me, and it takes a bit for the OC to kick in as well. So when I went into the chemical shack, and it was, okay, take off your mask, they start asking questions. They asked me my first question, and when I take off my mask, I just nice deep breath in and out. Then they ask the question, I start responding. They ask another question, I start responding. They ask a third question, and it's partway through the third question that I start off the sentence sounding much like I am now, and then I finish off the sentence like this. Because it took that amount of time for it to hit me hard enough to actually have an effect. For a moment there, I was hoping that I was one of the anomalies that it doesn't really do shit for.
I always heard that the best way to get yourself prepared for like peppers and stuff like that is by eating spicy stuff. And
I can believe it to a certain extent. Yeah.
I remember when I was working at a kitchen as a dishwasher. The boss was kind of like, he's kind of looking at me weird, and I'm like, okay, something's gonna happen. And he goes, hey Johnny, come here. I go, okay. I want you to test. I want to test this soup that I'm making. And I go, okay. And I see that there's peppers in the soup, the stew that he's making or whatever the hell was going on in there. And he takes out like a soup spoon and fills it up, holds it over, and then feeds me the soup. And I'm like, oh, that's not too bad. And then as soon as I said that, just my mouth went nuclear.
Yep.
And I dropped and just started gagging. And then everyone starts laughing. It was a habanero sauce that he was making. And it was not a soup at all. Like, yeah, he was he was prepping it so that they can try and make a mango habanero sauce.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, this is just the habanero part.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of every now and then I make onigiri for myself.
Okay.
And I have two different types of sriracha that I'll use for the onigiri. Some of them I use one, some of them I use the other. So the one is just the standard sriracha.
The rooster teeth or the rooster one?
Yeah. So everyone knows what that one's like.
Mm-hmm.
Let me quickly pull out the other one so I can read what exactly it is. Because it is the triple smoked sriracha that I got from this one place.
Ooh, that'd be nice. Yeah.
I've never actually had sriracha.
So sriracha is a chili sauce made with typically 2 to 3 different types of chilies.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a ketchup, but spicy.
Yep. So most of them use kind of sweeter, slightly spicy chilies. This one, so the sweet chili that isn't really spicy at all that's in this one, is the cherry chili. Makes sense. That's a fairly standard one to use. The next chili is the Scotch bonnet. The third chili that this one uses is the Carolina Reaper.
Shit. Who
Are
let
you
the
familiar with the
Scotsman in
Carolina
there?
Reaper?
Who let the Scotsman in there? Sorry.
Yeah. Are both of you familiar with what the Carolina Reaper is?
Yes.
I've heard of it. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
The only one, the only reason I know the other one is because I think McDonald's hammered on it like a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's 3 peppers that keep on going back and forth when it comes to the hottest pepper in the world. One is the Carolina Reaper. One is just known as Pepper X. And one is the Trinidad Scorpion. All of them are up in the realm of... So I think the original Carolina Reaper was 1.5 million Scoville units. To give you guys a point of reference, you all know habaneros. Actually, Johnny was just talking about a habanero. Do you know the habanero Scoville units?
No, I don't think I've heard of those. Are they little?
The habanero,
Oh,
when
okay.
it comes to the Scoville unit test, comes in at 300,000.
Okay.
Like I said, the weakest iteration of the Carolina Reaper was 1.5 million. the hottest ones of each of those three, if I remember correctly, are now topping out in the 2.5 to 3 million Scoville units. And do either of you or both of you know how the Scoville unit was originally assessed?
Nope.
No.
What the Scoville unit originally was the number of sprays with sugar water it would take before the affected person would no longer have their mouth on fire. So, the weaker the pepper, the fewer number of sprays. The stronger the pepper, the greater number of sprays. It's since been extrapolated out, so they no longer have to rely on someone having a Carolina Reaper and then sitting there with a spritz bottle of sugar water, just squeezing it 1,500,000 times, or 500,000 times.
At least
They're
at
now
that
just
point,
able to
you can
calculate.
appreciate the testers actually making their money.
Yep. But
Could you- We're just
It's-
making sure it's safe for everybody.
It's one of those old old measures that I absolutely love, just because, yeah, it was literally, here's a spritz gun of sugar water. Have this pepper. It's kind of burning? Okay. Spray your mouth until it stops burning. And the most fucked up part is sugar water is not one of the best ways of getting something to stop burning. Because if you really want to get something that's too spicy for you to quiet down, there's really two major solutions that you should reach for. Not water. Do not reach for water. You will kill yourself because it just washes the capsaicin down, which then causes the burn to continue in other locations. If-
I would go with the tried and true method of melted wax.
Surprisingly, that is not the correct answer. It is milk and spongy starches. And what I mean by spongy starches are things like bread.
Mhm.
Because the milk has fat-soluble elements in it. So the cream portion of milk, as one might guess from the word oligocapsaicin, that first bit, the oligo, means oil. So you can't mix oil and water and get them to stay together unless you have another component to emulsify. Milk already has an emulsification component. It also already has fatty molecules in it.
Mhm.
So the oil that's on your tongue gets picked up by the fat molecules, gets brought into them, taken off the taste bud. Then bread works in a similar fashion. It sucks up the oil off your taste buds and kind of sequesters it as it continues through your body, rather than just washing it down. And instead of having your tongue burning, you now have your tongue, your throat, all the way down to your stomach on fire.
That's why I noticed a lot of Indian places that will serve like the super spicy versions will usually recommend that you have a yogurt drink with it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's like the one I see most common is usually the mango one, which I would go for. 'Cause
Mango lassi.
Yeah. I would totally go for it. And it makes sense. It's the same thing. It's just yogurt's got a little bit more fat to it, or I don't know if maybe it's the fat or if it's the other stuff that yogurt has in it too. Probably helps too.
And to answer your question, Kiever Dam, it is bread.
Yeah. bread is the go-to for that. You can use other starches, like rice can work. Rice doesn't work as well as a really spongy bread.
Kind of makes you wonder if the nut milks would work as a replacement too. They might.
Yeah, nut milk would, because it still has that
Fat
fatty
component. Yeah.
component. And really, you need that fatty component. So another thing that can work if you're lactose intolerant is yogurts.
Mhm.
You guys know that a properly done yogurt has almost zero lactose, right?
I didn't, but that's kind of cool to know.
Yeah, so in the process of making yogurt, the lactose is broken down into various other chemical compounds. Some of them are broken down just into the simple monomeric sugar components. So that would be, lactose is glucose and galactose, I want to say. Let me quickly double check. I think it's galactose.
I'm not actually sure about soy milk though.
It does break down, but it just starts crying instead.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm not sure if soy would have enough fat components. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to try it, but I would have something else there just in case it doesn't work.
Did that not hit?
Mm-hmm.
No, I got it.
Did.
Okay.
I heard you. I got the crying. I was just like, I didn't want to picture a carton of soy milk crying. But I did want to picture a guy trying to use soy milk to fix his heat problem and then start crying. That would totally.
And I was right.
Either way.
I thought I remembered that off the top of my head. It is, in fact, glucose and galactose are the two monomeric sugars that together make lactose. And it gets broken down into those, then those get processed to other chemicals in the making of yogurt. So if you have a proper traditionally made yogurt, it will have almost zero, if not effectively zero, lactose, which means that it's possible to be consumed by people that are lactose intolerant. That is only for properly made yogurts. A lot of modern yogurts don't actually break down all the sugars anymore. So those are a different matter. Also, depending on how hard a cheese is, the harder a cheese, the less lactose is left within the cheese. Which then means that if you're lactose intolerant, you can consume more of that cheese with less of a problem, as the hardness of the cheese increases. And it's for a similar factor. The lactose is broken down in the process.
Yeah, I still refuse to try vegan cheese. There's just some things that I'm just like, I'm not crossing that line. They're probably fine, but
I can't imagine the milk that you would get from milking a vegan would be all that good.
yeah, I know, right? It'd be like, ooh. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the process of a lot of vegan foods. It's like I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, though, if you have to do that much shit to make the same thing, just eat the other thing.
The part that I don't get is it seems like vegans would not care if their food tasted like meat, but they always want to claim this tastes just like meat, and it only ever tastes like meat to someone that has completely fucking forgotten what meat tastes like.
Mm-hmm. I stand by the also opinion that the ones who get really, really mad at you for having a barbecue are really, really just mad at you because they're all of a sudden their stomach is going, oh yeah, I remember that smell. It made me feel full.
So I'm trying to decide how I want to finish off my swordfish dinner tonight. I have white rice, of course, with it. I have the swordfish with the marinade of a bit of shoyu and then a chili crisp that I'm experimenting with. I have a quick pickled onion that also uses a little bit of that chili crisp. So I feel like I have enough spice in the dish right now. So which furikake should I end up using for this? Let me grab my
Yeah,
options.
I really love having that conversation with vegans about like how many animals are actually vegetarians, and the answer is zero. It's just some animals are designed with the intentions of hunting, and some animals are just exploitive, and they're like, oh, there's a dead thing. I don't have to chase you. I'm not meant to. I'm gonna eat you anyway.
So which of these sounds the best to you guys?
Mhm.
Nori Tamago furikake, Ebi Fumi furikake, Shisho Fumi furikake, Salmon furikake, Wasabi flavored furikake, or Norikomi furikake.
The only one that I know is the one with the beans in it.
There were none with beans.
I thought edamame was a kind of bean.
No, Ebi.
Eddie.
Ebi Fumi. Ebi Fumi is shrimp.
Oh,
Ebi
okay.
is shrimp.
Go with that one.
Go with the Ebi Fumi.
Ebifumi. That's the only one I know how to spell.
Well, you should know how to spell salmon.
Those Duolingo lessons are coming in well. Not that I've actually been on it for 6 months.
Nice. But yeah,
No, I was kind of hoping that it would delete my account and I could just restart.
you don't want to go back and rebuild?
Yeah, I want to be the smart kid in class.
I know, right?
The senior in the freshman class, if you will.
I think we have very different definitions of smart.
Now, I remember my freshman year, I had failed my earth science class, and they're like, "Well, you need to, by the end of your high school, for the end of your high school years, you'll need to take this class again." Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so my junior year, I took it and got my semester out of the way. And I think it was at the end of my junior year, they're like, did you know you still have another semester? And I'm like, no, I passed my, I barely passed my, one of my semesters. They're like, no, you actually failed the entire year. You only got a D in the quarter.
Ouch.
And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. So they had me take the Earth Science again. It was my senior year. And I'm like, okay, well, at least I'll have my notes, depending on, which semester they put me in.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed it was first semester. I did the first semester for my junior year. And same teacher, same thing. And I'm like, oh, this can't be, I can't be this lucky. And yeah, same teacher, same curriculum, same notes. And I didn't have to do shit. So I just was a smart ass the entire rest of the semester. And I got my A.
Nice. Yeah, I have to admit there was one class that I failed in high school. And it was a English class that out of, I think there were 30 of us in the classroom, 4 or 5 people passed. because that English teacher fucking hated us
Nice.
and had some of the most retarded assignments that you had to give them their correct answer or you were wrong.
I had a geometry teacher like that.
And the one that pissed me off the most about this was there was an assignment, which was design a game that is impossible to win, but tells you how to win in the instructions. So, the game that I designed is a linear board. So there's no looping. It's just a straight line. And you start one square away from the end square. And your goal is to reach that end square. What you do every turn is you roll a d6. Then you subtract subtract 6 from whatever roll you got on the d6, and you move that number of squares forward. So the best roll, you roll a 6, you subtract 6, you move 0 squares forward. Worst roll, you roll a 1. -6, -5, you move 5 squares back. It's an impossible to win game, but it tells you how to win because you win getting to that final square, right?
Yeah.
I was told that that was not the correct answer. Despite it being an impossible game with the instructions on how to win in the game. Then I went, okay, so what is the right answer if this is not the right answer despite meeting the requirements? So, anyone listening along can do this as well. If you have a piece of paper, grab it, set it on your desk, make sure that it's a piece of paper that you don't really care about. Get a pen, draw a circle on the piece of paper. Set the tip of your pen anywhere within that circle. You can draw anywhere within that circle. Start drawing within that circle. Now, while you're drawing within that circle, you aren't allowed to lift up your pen. You aren't allowed to disconnect your line in any way. You're just allowed to scribble within that circle. While you're drawing within that circle, escape the circle without lifting your pen. So, can any of you do that?
Like escape the circle just by drawing out of it?
You aren't allowed to draw out of the circle, so you aren't allowed to just draw through the line that the circle made. But you have to escape the circle without lifting your pen, without drawing through the line that the circle made. That was the game that he had. There's one problem with this game. Like I said, you have a piece of paper that you don't care about right now, right?
Yeah.
Hold your pen straight down in the middle with one hand. Slip your other hand underneath the paper. Press up underneath the paper until the pen pokes through. Grab your pen with the hand that's under the paper, lift the paper up, set it off to the side. You're now outside of the circle without lifting your pen, right? That earned me a 0.
I mean, it's technically true. No one said you couldn't move in the third dimension.
Yep. Yeah, I got a 0 for that assignment because I did not give him the answer that he wanted. But also, I broke his answer. So everyone else that didn't give the answer that he wanted, they got like 50%. I got a 0. Despite having a solution that fits the criteria. And then beating the game that he had designed.
So
that pissed me right off.
What was his answer?
It was that circle game. That circle game was his answer. And when he explained the rules to the circle game, and did so while going, see, that's a game that's impossible to win.
Thank you.
That was when I reached under, popped the pen through the paper, and went, well, I just won. So yeah, got a 0 for that assignment. Wasn't the best option. So I had to retake the English course. Thankfully, I had a different teacher, and that one did not have the desire to fail everyone in the class.
No, I did an art project, and one of the main rules was absolutely no pencil.
Okay.
And in my rush to get it done, we were supposed to make an album cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I made an album cover for Fastball's "Make Your Mama Proud."
Mm-hmm.
And I had forgotten in my rush to get it done at the last minute. I did it all in pencil.
Ah.
And it was done in quite literally a half an hour. And dare I say, it was fucking hilarious. And
Mm-hmm.
he still failed it.
That sucks.
He's like, well, it's in the rules, no pencil. I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, you can't fault an art project because it was done in a pencil.
Have you ever heard the song "The Sick Note"?
Nope.
Johnny, have you heard of it?
I have not.
It's a song that is Irish to a certain extent. It's really Irish American.
Is it an earworm?
A bit, yes.
Okay.
It has the line, though, "In me haste to do the job, I was too blind to see that a barrel full of building bricks was heavier than me."
Ah, the Dubliners.
Yes. When you said, so in my haste to do the job, that song just popped into my head immediately. And since we're talking about schools, and I just saw Cannibalistic Wizards edition of this pencil identifies as a pen. There's something that I've seen happen quite a lot recently, and it annoys the shit out of me because it is an obvious lie that the people saying it don't even believe the words that they're saying. So you guys have all heard the Virginia school board meetings shit that's been going on for a while now, right? Where a bunch of parents are showing up to the school board meetings.
Well, that whole thing is enraging.
And they're being labeled as
domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
Yep. So the current governor of Virginia, they're currently doing a recall election for him, I think.
Good.
During his campaigning for that, said a line that we've probably all heard many times. That people keep saying that we're trying to bring CRT into classrooms, but it's not true, and it's an obvious lie that they're just shamelessly promoting. That's what he said about parents getting pissed off about the shit that they've identified as CRT. And it pisses me off because if he truly believed what they were complaining about was not CRT, then it would be the easiest victory in the world to go, yeah, this isn't CRT. What is happening is fucked up, though. So what we're going to do is we're going to ban each of these things. We aren't going to ban CRT because this isn't CRT. This has nothing to do with CRT. But we will ban teaching these things that the parents are objecting to. Easiest PR victory in the world. Especially if it isn't actually CRT, because then you aren't betraying the proponents of CRT. You're just going, okay, we're going to ban these fucked up things that aren't CRT as we've been claiming. None of them have done that.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't CRT, why would you not just go, okay, yeah, it isn't CRT, but we will ban the fucked up things. We will get rid of them. We will make it so that those can't be taught. But this actually isn't CRT, so there's no need to ban CRT because we're banning these aspects. And if you think that these aspects are CRT, well, banning these aspects specifically will then ban CRT as you see it. But no one does it, which gives the lie to their words of, this isn't CRT, well then why the fuck aren't you banning it?
Yeah, it's really telling. I agree with Monkey on this one, that they should just start putting cameras in every classroom and let the parents have the right to watch it. And if they don't like what's being seen, they can withdraw their kids. And I think there's a lot of Americans who are going to be voting out people.
Mm-hmm.
So if you that government wants to consider that terrorism because they're threatening to vote them out, then I guess you guys should terrorize the shit out of them. Vote them all out. I stand by that up here too. Like, we really have to look into who our administration is and who we're actually electing, and yeah, we gotta get rid of people. And they should be teaching CRT in schools.
And I like Pete's version of CRT. Yeah. Cocks, rectums, and titties.
Yep. Well, that seems to be what they really want to push. It's either we're going to teach your kids how they're racist, regardless of what they do, and we're also going to teach them how to be perverts.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
Here's a children's book that has drawn images of a trans person giving fellatio to another trans person.
And
wait, what?
By the way, here's our senior wrestling group giving striptease dances to the coaching staff.
Administration. Yep.
Yep. I totally get why people would hesitate to have children nowadays. I remember that being a thing when I was a kid, but yeah, in reflection, yeah, I kind of look back and I'm like, maybe I should have done that sooner because it was more normal than now. Because it's, yeah, you really kind of have to plan for everything at this point. It's either you're going to do it at home or you're going to have to choose a private school.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't really get away with that shit in a private school because you do have a little bit more say in a private school. They're expensive for a reason.
I'm the longer this goes on, the more I agree with Bill Burr's line about how 85% of us have to go.
Mm-hmm.
Just and underneath your seat, there's a questionnaire, and if you forgot your pen, you're already out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just, that part is infuriating because if they truly believed what they were saying, if they truly believed this isn't CRT, then why are you having problems banning it? You've declared yourself on Team CRT. I understand that. The only reason why you wouldn't want to ban this shit is if you thought that it was all part of the group that you've declared your allegiance to. If it isn't, as you're claiming, then you have no allegiance to it. Get rid of it. Done, dusted, no worries. You're able to get a PR victory because now you've banned the thing that parents were having trouble with. So who are they going to vote for? The person who didn't ban it or the person who did ban it? But they aren't doing that. And they refuse to do that. Which gives the fucking lie to their words.
And they wonder why people are losing faith in our our system.
Institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Across the board. And it's not just the schools, it's like everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like an example is New York. Do they really think that all the nurses that they fired are currently still unemployed? Because my understanding from you guys is a lot of them were already kind of being re-employed because they're kind of the National Guard too.
Well, the thing is that the military has already been in the process of their vaccine purge. Then they do this, and like I said, when it comes to, yeah, you have nurses and doctors in the National Guard, because of course you do. Military people need nurses and doctors. So you would have that. But we're talking National Guard, so they have civilian jobs. And if you're trained to be a doctor, why the fuck would you do any job other than be a doctor?
Mm-hmm.
But then they try to activate them, and I'm going, okay, you're getting 0 additional staffing.
Yeah, I'm not sure who said it, but I think it might have been on a Monkey stream the other night. But he said that it kind of looks like they're rehiring them under the tables just because like they're too short of people.
Mm-hmm.
And we've known that this was going to happen in the get-go. Like these are people. It's a control freak thing. Never elect hypochondriacs to the governmental system. I think that's the new plan.
And the states that have been refusing to do this shit are getting massive influxes of highly trained staff for a wide range of jobs, from hospital staffing to police force. Because a lot of New York police have left New York now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't blame them. Be like, fuck you guys.
Yep.
Sorry. That's sad. I mean, it's well, I mean, a lot of people have made their beds.
Mm-hmm. And even with the staffing shortages and all shit like that, you guys saw that Ilhan Omar has blamed the Twin Cities police force for the rising crime within the Twin City.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's
the
so special.
police force that they actively campaigned to have their funding cut and then drove off a shit ton of officers and are driving off even more officers. And then crime started to spike because no shit, crime started to spike. That's what everyone knew would happen. You get rid of police officers and suddenly the people that prevent crime in a number of different ways aren't there, so that prevention isn't there. So crime increases. Oh shit, shock, horror, who would have ever guessed except fucking everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But white rage.
Millie needs to be tried for treason. He's not going to be, but he needs to be tried for treason.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, I think.
Mm-hmm. And it's just absolutely infuriating.
I don't know where it all went wrong, but I can definitely say it's because we have too many freedoms. Like,
No, it isn't that we have too many freedoms. It's that we give credence to people that say that we should have fewer. That's where the problem came in. Because when you look at the crime-riddled areas, the difficulty of acquiring a legal firearm and the amount of crime within an area seem to be positively correlated. The ease of concealed carry in an area and the rate of crime in an area are negatively correlated. Gee, I wonder why that could be. Could it be that people are able to defend themselves and no one likes going after a hard target?
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's only something that's been known for fucking centuries, if not millennia.
It's almost like that's why we developed them in the first place. I mean, highwaymen were a thing too.
Yep. And highwaymen always chose to attack the people that were the least well equipped and that were the furthest away from any sort of legal authority.
And they watched you too.
Yep.
That stuff hasn't changed. People who commit crimes still do that. They just do it differently. And now they got free range because they got no one to watch out for them.
Well, it's like as laws adapt, so do the criminals.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's always been.
Mm-hmm. But now they've made it easier for them. It's just, I feel for the longest time that's kind of seems like what they want to do. It's like they really want to cheer on the worst sorts of people. And I don't quite get that. Like
You both know who BTK was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, during the investigation and trial for BTK, it mainly came out in the trial. There was one person who Dennis Radar had all the intent of killing. And he was pissed off at this person because he had never had the opportunity. It was this one woman who lived in the neighborhood. She had a big dog. She had large and imposing boyfriends. And a score of other things. She was known to have a weapon in the house, for instance. He tried to force her to get rid of the dog. He tried to convince her to get rid of her boyfriends. He tried to convince her that this was a safe neighborhood and there was no need to have a weapon in the house. He ultimately poisoned the dog, trying to get rid of it. She never became one of his victims because she was a hard target. She and her boyfriend and her dog were able to defend themselves. And it's kind of like one of the arguments that pisses me off to no end is when you tell women to be careful about what they drink and where they go, you're just telling them that you want someone else to be raped instead of them.
Sure.
That is one of the most infuriating statements, because here's the thing. The person who decides that they're going to go out and rape a random person, they're going to go for the easiest target. Mm-hmm. So if you care about the person, damn straight you should tell them to be able to defend themselves. Damn straight you should encourage them to take self-defense courses and to carry a concealed weapon, because you should want them to have every single chance to make it out intact, make it out without any problem, because they were too hard of a target to be focused on. And even if they did end up getting attacked, they were able to handle themselves. That's the gold standard that you want everyone to be at. Because when it becomes really difficult to be a criminal, the rate of successful crimes goes down.
I remember being at I was with a group of people, and then there was another group for a bachelorette party over next to us, and we got a shaker of just shots, and I think I got the one that was meant for this other chick, because after I took that shot, I crashed fucking hard. And like it was, I took the shot and I'm like, wow, you know, I don't think I've ever gotten this drunk off of this, something like this. And it was like, it wasn't immediate, but it was like watching a plane crash. Like it was just descending, and then just hit the ground. So yeah, it was. I was like, I gotta go somewhere because I'm not doing good. And and I think those are based off of weight.
Yep.
So
most of them are.
Judging by the body size of the girls that I was with, it would have knocked them out hard. And I was out for about a half an hour.
And that day, those girls were very happy that you were girly drink drunk.
I do like the fruity drinks, so it's
I don't blame you. You just gotta watch out for those because they have high fructose. They are very sugary, which leads to headaches. You would know.
Increases the dehydration, yeah.
Yep. I don't drink a lot, period, though. So, but it was always one of those things I was warned off of things like wine for, because the ladies always like the wine. Was the sugar? The sugar is really what's going to get you.
Well, my rule is typically for 2 beers, 1 water, and then 4 shots, 1 water.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And I like how, at least until I got too drunk to pay attention, and then it was just, well, how long has it been since I had water? Yeah, I can last.
And I like how you said that, I don't really drink that much. Meanwhile, I've just downed my shoe of sake. I'm downing my shoe of umashu. I have my beer open.
Well, I haven't drank in a while. I don't not drink, but I do miss sake.
Yeah, I'm more. I think everyone knows me well enough to know that I partake more in the devil's lettuce than I do in the devil's juice. But
the minions that have been present while I'm drinking, and I mean actually drinking, not just the 3 drinks that I listed. Yeah, that's just my drink with dinner tonight, because it works really well with the swordfish and rice. But I have an absolutely monstrous tolerance. And just to make sure that no one misunderstands, when I say I have an absolutely monstrous tolerance, I've been drunk twice in my life. It's not for lack of drinking. One time, given the number of drinks that I drank and the time period that I drank them, I was about at the LD50. Are you guys familiar with what an LD50 is?
No.
Nope.
An LD50 is the term for the level of consumption of any substance, where at that point, 50% of the population, if they had consumed that amount, would be stone dead. So the more poisonous something is, the lower the dose for the LD50. The higher it's... The more poisonous, rather. The higher the LD50, the less poisonous. The lower the LD50, the more poisonous. There we go. That's the proper association. I stumbled in that twice, just because I went to say the more poisonous, the lower the first time, and then I ended up swapping it halfway through. But that's the proper association. The first time I was drunk, I was about at the LD50. So, at about the point where 50% of the population would have just fucking died, I got drunk. The second time, I was over the LD50. And again, I got drunk. But I'm still here. So when I say I have a monstrous tolerance, I mean, statistically, I am a fucking anomaly. I'm to the point where I quite literally cannot get drunk off beer.
Yeah, I just get sick a lot. It was my determining factor. It was like, I'd have it's always kind of weird. Like if I drink something dumb like a fuzzy navel, which is peach schnapps and orange juice, I'm fine. And I think it's probably because of the juice. And I the last time I had that, I was 18 because I was gonna go skating for the first time in my life, and I absolutely deliberately got myself a little tipsy first. Mostly because I was afraid of falling, and I figured if I had a little heat in my head, I wouldn't feel it as much. After that, I noticed that things like Smirnoff Ice will get you fucking puking everywhere. Beer, on the other hand, I was never a fan of beer. Asian beer, I think I've had one where I liked because it was like a strawberry beer.
Asian beers are delicious, but they are the weirdest fucking beers.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't drink, you don't know this. When it comes to beers, if a beer is very light, it tends to be what is dubbed a piss water beer. There are exceptions to this, like there are some decent IPAs. But a vast majority of really light beers, they'll be shit like Natty Light, Bud Light, shit like that. That is absolute piss water. And it is dubbed piss water because it kind of tastes like someone just pissed in a thing of water. Also, it has about the same alcohol content as someone who's a fairly heavy drinker pissing. So piss water twice over. Asian beers can be insanely pale. But they still have flavor.
Yeah.
It is amazing. And it's because the type of malt and the way that they hop their beers. So there's, most of the time, and no, I have not drunk enough piss to recognize the taste. I have taken other people's word on this. And a number of the other people that have taken their word on this, I can absolutely believe that they have consumed enough piss in order to be a connoisseur of the matter.
Now, for those, if you have to name your beer, because the actual name for it is natural ice.
Yep. Well, there's natural ice, and
well,
then there's natural light, which is natty light.
Yeah. Well, and now there's natty ice.
Yep.
So the fact that it was such a slang thing, that it became marketable, does not help the fact that it tastes like ass.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that keeps natural ice and natural light afloat is college students want to get drunk and they're poor.
Mm-hmm.
So, having
it's not
type
just,
of beer.
It's not just that. They want to get drunk, and they want to be able to drink as much as possible, while, making it seem like they're drinking a lot of beer.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh man, I had 15 beers. It's like, dude, it's natty ice. Like,
so what you're saying is someone should have taught them how to make a proper grog.
Yeah, but even then, so many of these people are absolutely just bitch-born that they wouldn't be able to handle that. One of the funniest moments from college when it came to drinking was... You guys all know what Kings is, right? The drinking game Kings?
Oh, yeah.
Nope. But
sometimes known as King's Cup. So, the way that you play Kings, Jen, is you have just a standard deck of cards. Every card has a different rule associated with it.
Okay.
So, a couple of the rules are like, if you draw a queen, queens are questions. So, there's two ways that questions can be played. One way is the old school, whose line is it anyways fashion, where you just go around the circle of people playing, and you can only ask a question, and you have to keep it going for as long as you can. The other way of playing questions is not used if... So one of the other rules is nines sometimes is never have I ever. And if you play never have I ever as nines, then you don't play questions as never have I ever. But that's another way that you can play questions.
We played it as 9 as rhyme.
Yep, that's another way. So if you do 9 as rhyme, then queens questions sometimes becomes never have I ever. But you have like 6 as chicks. So if someone draws a 6 from the pile, every girl has to drink. If you draw a... Let's see, it's 6 as chicks. Which one? It's...
I thought it was 6 was dicks. And then, let's see, ace. Let's see, ace.
It reminds me of the story my dad told me.
Rules.
The reason I joke about Alberta being a hard liquor place is you talk about college parties. He told me about what they used to do. And so the rule of thumb is everybody had to bring a bottle of something. And all got put in the same punch bowl. And it was called Purple Moose for a reason.
And ace is the absolute best because ace is waterfall. So I just pulled up the rules for that.
I just did too.
And 6 is chicks, 5 is guys, 4 is floor, 3 is me, 2 is you. So if you draw 2, whoever draws a 2... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, this one says 4 is whores, which is the ladies.
Okay.
6 is dicks.
Okay, so yeah, there's a couple different versions of it. The one that I'm used to is the one that I'm currently looking at. So it's If you draw a 2, it's you. So you point to someone else in a circle, they drink. If you pull a 3, you drink. If you pull a 4, then everyone races to touch the floor. The last person to touch the floor drinks. 5 is guys, all the guys drink. 6 is chicks, all the girls drink. 7 is heaven, raise your hand. Last person to raise their hand drinks. 8 is mate. You and someone else drink. You get to pick who drinks with you. Then, like I said, there's 9 is rhyme, or 9 is... Oh, Jack is also sometimes never have I ever. So this one has 9 is rhyme, 10 is categories, Jack is never have I ever, Queen is questions, King is you make a rule and that rule has to be followed throughout the rest of the game. There's another version where it's until the next king is drawn. And one of the things that you can do if it's throughout the rest of the game, the next king can cancel out the previous rule. Then ace, like I said, it's the best card. It's waterfall. What waterfall means is that the person who draws the ace starts drinking. Then while they're drinking, the next person starts drinking. Then the next person, then the next person, then the next person, all the way around the circle. And at any point, the person who started drinking can stop. And then it goes around the circle in the same order. So the first person gets to decide how long everyone else drinks. This is where I fucking destroyed people in college. Because monstrous tolerance, playing with straight alcohol. I go up with a bottle of Johnny Walker Black. I don't come down until over half the bottle's down my throat. People start falling out of the game very quickly, especially since I drew all 4 aces. Kings is so much fun. It is horrendous if you're trying not to get drunk, but it is fun. And
yeah, we used to play fives as you passed it out to 5 different people because no one wanted to dance.
Ah.
So you pick.
Oh
two.
yeah, 5 is
you pick 2.
Another rule.
Someone gets 3, someone gets 2.
Yep.
You're not wrong, Terry. It does sound like a game that leads to lots of vomiting.
Oh yeah, it will lead to people just being absolutely piss drunk, just completely fucking wasted.
And some people will eventually fall down the stairs. Not saying it was me, but it was me.
Yeah. It was like that one time I worked at 7-Eleven, which technically speaking, that 7-Eleven was absolutely on our bar line. And this guy fell down walking up, because it was the store itself was on a little bit of a hill. There were actual paths and stepways you could use to get up, but this guy decided he was going to go up the hill. And he fell on his face and landed on the gravel, and he was all like, I'm going to sue you guys. And I was like, I don't think you're going to sue us because, A, you're on camera falling uphill, and you're drunk as shit.
Mm-hmm. And to respond to the question asking if Mexico has the, what was it, 52 was the question?
54% proof.
54%. It is not Mexico. And the highest alcohol beer is the Scottish brewery Brewmeister has snake's venom, which is a 67.5% ABV. It does this by having multiple rounds of yeasting and then freeze concentrating several times. So it's yeasted with beer yeast, then champagne yeast, then it is freeze concentrated several times after that, jacking up the amount of alcohol. Then the runners up to that are the Tactical Nuclear Penguin at 32%, the Schwarzbach at 40%, Sink the Bismarck at 41%, and one of its own from the Scottish brewery, which was the Armageddon. And apparently they decided to swap out the Armageddon because a number of people complained that it was too weak. So yes, the highest alcohol beer is currently a Scottish brewery's Snake Venom.
Not surprised.
Yep.
I mean, I actually am, though, because I'm surprised they didn't use thistles instead.
Nice.
I hail from Scotland. I'm allowed to do that. I mean, I don't, but I do. Like 8 generations ago.
One of the funniest drinking games that I've ever heard of. This is responding to Cynic saying that he doesn't think that he ever played a drinking game other than Goon of Fortune, which I'm not familiar with that one, actually. There's a drinking game that I think is played in both China and Japan that is Drunken Mental Math. So in China, there's this whole system of hand counting.
Okay.
Where on a single hand, you can go up to 10. On 2 hands, you can go up to 110. So, massively different than Western, we top out at 5. Japan also has a similar hand counting, if I remember correctly. So, in the game, it's as many people are playing will all throw out their hand in some position for their hand counting system, and all of them will try to do the mental math faster than everyone else. The person who succeeds in the mental math then doesn't have to drink everyone else drinks. So it's this constant race to be not only the fastest, but also correct. Because if you get the number wrong, you drink twice.
Oh, okay. So Cynic explained it. You peg a bag of wine on a rotating clothesline and spin. Whoever it stops on drinks. Okay.
Okay. That's
the only other drinking game I know is really immature because I still know people who used to do it. But Truth and Dare, Truth or Dare.
That's a bit high school drinking game.
Oh, I knew kids who kept doing it in high school. And I mean, it still works. I mean, even if it is more immature, it still kind of works. Because, I mean, yeah, when you're an adult and you can dare a super drunk person to do something stupid, some people still find that funny. But
yeah,
for a lot of kids, actually, my brother used to talk about the joke for the longest time when you knew guys were going to go out drinking was the guys who would tag each other so they could do little moonwalks against each other. So, like, you know, if you knew your buddies were driving in a different car, you would try to time it so you could moon each other.
Okay.
When you're bored in a Western, well, you know, my city is a big city now, but at the time it wasn't. So I'm just saying.
Actually, it was pretty funny. My first time going to the Emerald City Comic Con, we were on. It was a whole mess of us, and as we're going over pretty much between Washington and Montana, like all of a sudden, like we'll see on the freeway, someone's car will pick up speed, and we're like, oh, I wonder what they're doing, you know, and you pull over and my friend's cheeks are hanging out the passenger door.
Nice.
Or the window, not the door, but you got it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, it's wartime. Let's do this.
That's when you're half waning on a moon. Yeah, the things you do when you're drunk in your 20s. I never did that, but I'm pretty sure ladies had their own version of it where I don't know that that's necessarily a mooning. But if you tried to pull that shit now, I think some feminists would be very concerned. Like, oh no, the titties are coming for me.
And then there's also the old school 7 Minutes in Heaven, which again is a high school one.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, high school, and sometimes high school evolves into college, even though it shouldn't.
Yeah.
But you understand why it does.
Yep, especially now, because we almost seem to intentionally retard the children as they're leaving high school going into college.
Yeah, that's why they want to start them on them when they're still in elementary. Like, oh, if we get to you now.
And then college is them trying to hold on to their high school days.
Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things that, what the fuck? Just realize that you're supposed to be becoming an adult and become one. Please, for the love of God and all that is holy.
Yeah, especially nowadays.
Yep.
The reality is really killing some people. Sorry that real life is too boring for you. You gotta make it more exciting than it actually is. I mean, I think it's kind of exciting. Too exciting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly wondering who I pissed off in my last life.
Oh. All right. Yeah, I'm kind of losing.
Losing your
Story.
head of steam.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else to cover?
I got my main rant out of the way with the Virginia governor trying to say that, yeah, this isn't really CRT. It's just people trying to give racist dog whistles. But again, if he truly believed that it was not CRT, it would be the simplest fucking thing in the world for him to get a hell of a lot of good grace by going, okay, yeah, this isn't CRT, but I hear the parents saying that it isn't right that this is being taught. And yeah, they're right. It isn't right that the white students are being taught they hate everyone and that they've oppressed people just by being born. So we're going to ban the teaching of that. It isn't CRT because that's not what CRT is, but it's something that's fucked up that shouldn't be allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my friend, he's kind of a he posted a thing on Instagram that I saw. He's like, "Oh, what's the problem with learning the truth of this stuff?" And I'm like, "Okay, so what's the truth?" And he goes, "You know that the white people had black people as slaves." And I go, "Okay, I'll concede that was the truth. Where did they get them?"
Mm-hmm.
Also, why does that justify you teaching white kids that upon the moment of their birth, they're automatically going to be racist? And then assume that after 20 years of hearing that shit, they're not going to end up thinking they must be?
And the thing is that, yeah, white people owned slaves. No one's denied that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been something that everyone's gone, yeah, that's a thing that happened. It was always taught. So do you guys know when a lot of the American history that involved black people was actually removed from standard history lessons? Because there was a point where a lot of it was removed. And it was fucking horrendous that it happened because it got rid of some unbelievably important characters throughout American history. It's the reason why a lot of people don't really know Frederick Douglass.
I would imagine it has to do with the Dems because they seem to do that a lot. Not to point fingers, but they seem to do that a lot.
You're correct in that. Do you happen to know when it was, Johnny?
For what?
When a lot of the important black characters in, or black people in American history were removed from standard history text?
Check says
No.
1921.
It was, I believe, before that, because it was due to a history book that Woodrow Wilson wrote. Woodrow Wilson, of course, being one of our former presidents. He wrote a history book, and Woodrow Wilson is infamous for, he's the one who aired or rather screened KKK propaganda piece, The Birth of a Nation, at the White House. He was an unrepentant racist. And as part of him being an unrepentant racist, he decided that he would write a better history of the United States, a more correct history of the United States that focused on the main important figures. Because he was a very educated man, highly regarded, people went, okay, this is one of the presidents, wrote this history text, and he was a scholar of history, so clearly this is something that we should adopt. So a lot of people adopted it. He almost completely removed Frederick Douglass from being mentioned in American history. Frederick Douglass is a ridiculously important figure in American history. Frederick Douglass was the first, let me quickly double check because I'm almost 100% positive as I'm saying this, but I want to just make damn sure that I am right when I say it. And yep, Frederick Douglass was a diplomat for the United States. He was an abolitionist. He was a suffragist. He was an author and editor. And he served several different positions in the American government. He was also a Republican. He was named to these positions by Republicans. And if I remember correctly, he was the first sitting black figure in, it was either the House or the Senate. Because he was goddamn intelligent. So they named him to sit to that seat. He got elected and he was placed in the seat. Really goddamn important figure in history. Insanely influential. He was almost completely removed from history books. He was almost completely removed from history books by Woodrow Wilson.
Well, it's a common theme. It's like when you notice that they have to replace every prominent white woman with a black woman, and you're just sitting there like, I don't have a problem with that if it's theater. But do they know that if they go to Africa, they actually have war zones where there are female figures where they were actually leaders in their own right and actually saved people? Go to Africa. There are many countries in Africa. Over the last 100 years, they've had so many wars in Africa. You can find hundreds of stories of legit real life human beings, some of whom might even still be alive, with stories that would make what we did as white people look easy.
Just to correct myself, I was wrong. It was Hiram Rhodes Revels was the first black senator. And he was also a Republican.
So I'm thinking about like I get the countries confused because yeah, Africa's big, there's a lot of countries, but it had to do with when they really kind of located where the silverback gorillas were. The two countries in between were in the middle of war zones. And they had this, story of this woman who had helped a whole group of people escape that. I really want to relook up her name and write Hollywood and be like, so why is it when people like this exist, you just ignore them?
Mm-hmm.
But you'll turn Queen Elizabeth's mother into a black woman, even though she's like the gingerest person on the planet. Like, she was the most gingerest person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
She was the ginger queen.
And this is something that I saw. I'm trying to remember the name of the English historian that I saw talking about this. He was talking about how a bunch of different groups within the UK are fabricating history in order to make things sound more impressive to their mind than they are. So rather than actually talking about the first black nurse within England, they named someone else as the first black nurse within England, despite her not being trained as a nurse, never serving as a nurse, and never doing so in England.
Mm-hmm.
So, not a nurse in England, not a nurse anywhere else, but they name her the first black nurse in England.
Like, it really, it's kind of gross. Like, real life human beings, and they'd rather make up something.
Yep. And
they act like the black community doesn't know that.
Yeah, they're actually important people throughout history that are fascinating, and they absolutely deserve recognition.
Mm-hmm. It's why I'm grateful that I know Thomas Selwell, because if I hadn't seen his name and I hadn't caught a clip of him on TV, if he had died before I was born, I wouldn't know about him either. You guys should all look him up if you like him. But they do that a lot.
There's a lot of people, like I said, that should be remembered in history that they will completely overlook because, well, they don't match our narrative. Well, except they should. It's just you're saying that they don't because they either don't happen as early as you want them to have happened, or it's because they were part of a group that you don't want to acknowledge did these things before your group. It's like the whole idea behind the big switch. The big switch is one of the single most infuriating myths in American politics, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You're both familiar with what the big switch was, right?
Oh, yeah. Black conservatives taught me, educated me on that.
Yep.
I do not know.
So they claim that there was a switch of the parties where, yes, the Democrats in the early 20th century, in the 19th century, in the 18th century, they were the slaveholders, they were the party of Jim Crow, they were the party of the KKK thrice over. But then there was a big switch, and I think it's always Nixon that they point to for when the big switch happened, where before Nixon, yeah, it was the Democrats. The Democrats were the ones that were doing all that shit. But then after the big switch, it swapped. And the racists and bigots and everyone that was responsible for those things became Republicans, because the Republicans started trying to do the Southern strategy in order to win over the racists in the South. And the Democrats, because the Republicans just won over all the racists, were left with all of the high-minded, correct people. So the real party of abolition is the Democrats, because it was the Republicans. Yeah, the Republicans were the party of Lincoln, But then there was the switch, and now it's the Democrats are really the party of Lincoln. It's all horseshit.
Mm-hmm.
It is all complete horse shit. Because when you actually look into it, there's one person that they point to as the hallmark of the big switch. And it was blanking on his name right now. Let me quickly double check. Longest. What's the term that I'm looking for? Term for continuously talking in order to prevent a vote. Why am I blanking on it? It's on the tip of my tongue, and it's just filibuster.
Mm.
So the longest filibusters were effectively during the civil rights movement. And the person who had the longest filibuster of all time currently is Strom Thurmond. Strom Thurmond spoke for 24 hours and 18 minutes. Strom Thurmond is the only person that they're able to point to as the person that was the exemplar of the big switch. Every other member of the Democrat Party that was a KKK member prior to when they say was the big switch, after when they claimed the big switch happened, was guess what party? A Democrat still.
Mm-hmm.
There was one person that switched sides, and that was Strom Thurmond. Do you know why Strom Thurmond switched sides? Why he resigned from the Democrat Party and became a Republican?
Why?
Strom Thurmond claims that after the whole civil rights movement, filibuster that he had, the 24 hours and 18 minutes, he ended up thinking about what he had argued after his side had lost. He thought about it more, and he realized he could not continue with the party in good conscience because he had changed his opinion. And he continuously said why he changed his opinion. He continuously said that had he the ability to go back and relive that moment, he would have done everything differently. He changed parties because he had a change of heart. The reason that people should have a change of parties. He is the only person that they're able to point to as an example of the big switch. And he only changed his party because he decided what he had done was wrong. The other members continued being Democrats. A KKK recruiter continued being a Democrat, continued being a sitting senator. The other people that were part of the KKK or associated with the KKK that were Democrats before the big switch, yeah, they stayed Democrats after the big switch. The policies that made Republicans before the big switch of people should be judged as people, individuals as individuals, not as members of this group or that group. Guess what the Republican policy on that shit is to this day? Is it that... So, the Democrats, before when this big switch happened, they were the party saying that black people were constitutionally one way, that black people had an inability to learn proper English, so it was just something that we had to accept, that they would not speak proper English. They would have problems doing math. They would have problems being able to compete with white people. And their original policy in this was so fuck them. The Republicans said, no, individuals are individuals. Some people might not be able to compete with other people, but if we go by merit and we go by a single standard, then we will get the best people, and we will also get a mix of people, because the ability to do things is not determined by one's skin pigmentation, nor is it determined by their genitalia. So, let's jump ahead to the modern Republican Party. The modern Republican Party believes that the ability for someone to succeed is not determined by their genitalia or their skin pigmentation, so that's the same. They believe that it's wrong to judge people as a group, so that's the same as it was. They still continue to claim that the best way of handling things is to have one standard and hold everyone that is going for that position, going for that whatever, to that one standard. So that's the same as it was. So where the fuck did the switch happen on the Republicans? Well, maybe it happened when we look at the Democrats. So let's look at the Democrat position. And modern day Democrats, especially in education, are often claiming that judging people on English proficiency is racist, because we cannot assume, and it is wrong to assume, that black people will have the same facility with language as white. Wait, that's the same as it was before, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's in the math section. So they claim that math is systemically racist, because to try to hold black people to the same standard of math proficiency as white people, and to say that there is a correct answer, well, that's discounting people. That's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, it always kind of fucks up their plan when you invite somebody from, like I said, African countries who don't have that problem.
Yep.
And they had less funding. A lot of them had a lot less funding. And they still didn't have that problem.
When you look at this is one thing that pisses me off, because I'll hear it's systemic racism that there aren't more black people in STEM. So part of STEM is the E in STEM. Everyone knows what the E stands for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jen, what does the E stand for?
Egalitarianism. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry, you rephrase that.
What does the E stand for in STEM?
I actually don't know.
I just asked if you did, and you said
know.
Yeah.
Hipponics.
Is it?
It stands for engineering.
Oh.
It's science, technology, engineering, and medicine. That's what STEM means.
Good call,
Science,
Terry. Good call.
Technology, engineering, and medicine. So when you look at the number of African American engineers,
Mm-hmm.
or rather, when you look at the number of native born African American engineers, to use their phraseology, which I still fucking hate the idea of a hyphenated American. Fuck that. But when you look at that group, yeah, they do have a fairly low rate in engineering. So they claim that this is a clear sign of racism. There's one major problem that I have never been able to get a valid answer out of people when I bring this up. When you look at the number of, I believe it's Nigerian petrochem engineers,
Mm-hmm.
they are ridiculously overrepresented to an absolutely insane degree. So if it's racism, can anyone explain to me why a racist policy that keeps people down because of their skin color, that's why you're saying that it's a racist policy, would allow people of the same skin color from a different nation to succeed. But people of that same skin color that are native-born sons and daughters, it would try to suppress. Is there any mechanism that could functionally happen in a racist society? Well, maybe you're going to say it's xenophobic. Well, that's still a problem because it's the people from a different country that are succeeding. So it can't be xenophobia. It can't be racism, because if it was racism, then it wouldn't matter what country the black people are from.
It's almost like their parents beat the shit out of their kids when their kids come home with shitty grades. I'm just saying, foreigners do that more often than Americans.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me, but I don't really understand what xenophobia is, because, I personally would be afraid of xenomorphs.
God damn it. But yeah, it's just this thing that drives me crazy, because when you look at it, the moment that you ask that question, it becomes absurd saying that, oh, yeah, it's racism that keeps black people from succeeding in the US. They're black people that are succeeding. If it was racism, why are those black people succeeding, but these black people not? They're just as black as one another. So why the fuck would it prevent one while allowing the other if it was racism? If it is an anti-nativist, which, are you guys familiar with what nativist is?
I could guess.
Nativism is the idea that people from that area are better. So an anti-nativist would be thinking that people from that area are worse.
So essentially a civic pride type of thing.
Yeah, civic pride would be described as a nativist idea, where the people born in that area are better than people born outside of it. It goes a little bit past civic pride, because civic pride has the aspect of, if someone takes on all the ideas of that civilization, then they also become equal. Nativist has kind of that plus, or lacks that, and is more, this is our people. It doesn't matter what group they're from, they were born in this area, they're better. So if you have this anti-nativist, yes, as a nativist, we only allow these tribes into our nativists. Nice. So if it is an anti-nativist sentiment, then, well, that still fails, because we have people from America that succeed. So it can't be a anti-nativist sentiment, it can't be a xenophobic sentiment, and it can't be a racist sentiment that are keeping people from succeeding. So what other things could it be? And I'm realizing that I was about to launch into another tangent that could take another hour or so. So I should probably cork it right now.
We are over the 2-hour mark.
Yes.
So we are going to go with parting thoughts. Jen?
Don't do sexy poses in front of your dad's funeral. Do that at home. Save it for the park. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good evening. And look forward to Halloween.
Okay.
What type of park are you saving sexy poses for?
I don't know. I just think anything's more appropriate than your dad's funeral. But like, I know some people will have
That's
a
a fair
wake at
call.
some
Fair
people
call
will
on
have
that.
the wake at a park. I could see doing a sexy pose maybe at the wake, where there's drinking a little bit and there's a little bit of a party, but yeah, not at the casket.
Fair enough.
And Sanguine?
So I will once again shill my food-based Twitter account. So, tossing that link into chat. And that's where you'll be able to find food-based updates. You'll be able to ask me questions about food and cooking if you so decide. I'm currently updating that once a week, where I just do a massive series of, well, not really that massive, but I do at least 7 tweets every week, all in a go on Wednesday into Thursday, of the meals that I made for that week. And I just did that yesterday, as you can see. So you can see what I ate last week. If you so desire, like I said, you'll be able to ask me questions there about food. I go by Ask because it's Aceberg's Kitchen over there. And any future food content will also be distributed through that Twitter. And I will mention it when I do finally start up making videos again, and where you'll be able to find those videos. But other than that, I'll sign off with my standard of, if you're passionate about something, make sure that you devour it. Don't let it devour you.
I feel like you could almost call your food thing Sanguine's food porn folder.
Yeah, it is kind of ending up as that for right now. It is... Yes, it is all before it is eaten and well before it is digested. In fact, there are no after shots of either of those. So fear not, you'll be able to go to that Twitter account and just look at the food when it is looking tasty. And if you have any tips on how I can improve my food porn shots, do let me know, because I am trying to improve my plating up.
I wonder if there's a niche market for stomach content.
If there were, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy. So, as a real quick last tangent that I'll try to sprint through as quickly as I can. Did you guys know that the way that we discovered most of what we know about the human stomach is that there was a man who ended up having he got shot in the stomach, and in the process of him recovering from being shot in the stomach, the wall of his stomach fused with his skin.
Ooh.
So there was a hole that led from outside of him straight into his stomach. And this man went to a doctor to try to get it stitched up. The doctor, being an absolutely psychotic but genius fuck, decided that instead of just stitching this man up and letting him return to life as normal, kidnapped this man for several years and performed experiments when it came to the stomach, how it dissolved things, what its contents were as far as its juices. So he was the one to determine that it was not just the stomach acid that was dissolving food, but stomach acid, in fact, contains a shit ton of enzymes that break down the food. And he did this by clocking a series of tests where he would lower food into a beaker of stomach acid at the same time that he lowered food into the hole in this man's side that led straight into his stomach, and then track how long it took for the food to be dissolved by each. And he determined that the acid alone was not sufficient in order to dissolve the food as quickly as the stomach did.
I could see that, because if you know anything about stomachs, they use them for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Like animal stomachs were used for a shit ton of things.
Haggis.
Mm-hmm. Not just haggis, it's just like the stuff that you could use it for afterwards, like in terms of like chemicals. There's a lot of chemicals in the stomach.
Yeah, and that's how we figured out a lot about what we know when it comes to stomachs.
That poor guy, though.
It was this absolutely insane, brilliant doctor kidnapping a guy who had a very particular disorder. After, I think it was like 3 or 4 years, the guy managed to escape and was not seen by the doctor again, but there was evidence that he survived his escape. it was fucked, but useful information was gleaned.
Well, that's a plus side, I guess.
Yep.
All right. Well, for me, I know that Camel and Kiever Dam were in talks for a stream. If she's still in the audience, let's see if she's still interested. Let's see here. Check if you're interested as well. You can join in on that. And I'm going to go with my Greg Giraldo quote for the day. Let's see. People always want to compare the dogs to having kids. That's insulting. First of all, no one has a dog because they were too drunk to pull out.
Nice.
And with that, the zoo's closed.
Have a good night, all.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys. Everyone's probably going to see Monkey anyway.